the champion of middle schoolers everywhere, and his name is Andrew Tate.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Mr. Beast.
Oh, frick. Donovan, cheers to episode 5.
Cheers.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up, where today me and Donovan are going to be talking about a lot of things. The most important one in my Rolodex of information floating around in my brain is involving good, conservative, masculine influencers.
That's what we're all about.
But the problem when they're not Christian and the pitfalls that can be associated with that. What do you want to talk about today?
That sounds good to me. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Well, we're both enjoying an ale 8.
Because it is a late one.
It is a late one. We're recording on a Wednesday night after Braden got off of working his day job, which is a youth pastor.
Yeah. And right now, the moon and Jupiter are in conjunction.
Hold on.
This is part one of my fun facts.
So we're just diving right in. Fun facts, baby. Let's go.
So I've gotten pretty into astronomy lately, and I have
Now, hold on real quick for everyone at home. There is a difference. There's astronomy.
Astrology.
And there's astrology. Astronomy is science. Astrology is what middle-class white women do to try and define their personality. Go on.
So we're talking about astronomy.
Science.
Really enjoy learning about stars and constellations. Mm-hmm. And just getting to see the different planets at different times and visibilities throughout the day. Right now, you're not going to know this because this will come out on Sunday, but the moon and Jupiter are currently in conjunction. But on Monday, January 30th, I'm looking at my phone so I don't get this wrong, at 6:08 a.m., Mercury will emerge in the east and reach 15 degrees above the horizon by sunrise. And so Mercury is normally pretty close to the sun. Okay. So if you're awake at 6:08 a.m., go outside when you're looking at the sunrise, see if you can spot Mercury. You should see it to the right of the sun.
It's going to look like a little star, little blinking star.
It should look pretty big and bright.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you'll be able to see Mercury.
Well, it's going to be tough where we're at because we live in a valley and surrounded by mountains, so we might have to go up and see it somewhere.
Yeah, most of the time Mercury stays pretty close to the sun, but by the point that you can actually see it, it's pretty much like the sun is so bright at that point that you're kind of it kind of gets overpowered.
Yeah, the sun gets so bright it just washes it out.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it's going to be at a further enough distance that it's going to be all lit up.
Yeah. On
Awesome.
Monday, January 30th.
2023.
Mercury.
So if this is 2024 and you're listening to this, you've already missed it.
Yeah. Well, this happens the same time every year.
So that was part 1.
Huh?
So that was part 1?
Well, part 1 was me talking about Jupiter.
Oh, wait, what does it mean with the moon and Jupiter being in conjunction?
It means that they're kind of at the same latitude in the sky. So it's like you can see the moon. It's I believe it's waxing right now.
It's getting bigger.
Yeah, next Wednesday will be a full moon.
It is waxing then. Waxing is when the moon gets bigger. Waning is when the moon gets smaller.
Yeah, and I was actually planning on talking about that next week for my fun fact. We're gonna have astronomy fun facts every now and then.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do 2 in a row.
Probably.
I mean, we could.
I might.
Doesn't really matter. So my fun fact is
talk about lore of the moon.
Lore of the moon.
Of why when a full moon comes out, crime rates go up, werewolves come out.
Well, I think crime rate might just go up on a full moon because it's easier to see at night.
We'll talk about it this week.
Hey, who knows? We'll do some research.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so my fun fact is not near as, how do you say, Renaissance? My fun fact is going back to World War I. So,
is this your favorite of the World Wars, or is that World War II?
Which I would never, I would never seek to classify either of the World Wars as a favorite. But as a topic of history, I prefer the Second World War.
I'm trying to remember how you phrased it in a different episode where you're like, Your favorite historical topic is...
Yes, that's yes. So that's the Second World War.
Okay.
But this... Oh, I do want to make a revision. So in episode 3, I believe, my fact was about American bomber crews suffering higher losses than the United States Marine Corps in the Pacific. The problem is, with that fact, is that while it is correct, they did sustain higher losses, I grossly overstated the losses. So I said around 48,000 bombers, like not bombers, but pilots, airmen lost their lives. It was actually 26,000. And so like half of what I said initially. So I had to correct myself on that one. And the Marine Corps lost around 25,000. So
pretty close.
They were pretty close, but it's still incredible that the bombing air wing of the United Army's Air Corps lost more men than the entire Marine Corps did in the Pacific. Fighting a ground war, it still blows my mind.
Take everything we say with a grain of salt.
No, that one's... I got it now. That was correct. Anyway, I just had to correct it. The numbers I said in the last episode were wrong. Anyway, but on to my fact of today, which involves the First World War, involves the pump-action shotgun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. America, am I right? So the war started in 1914, right? Europe went into war. Germany, France, Russia, England, they're all fighting each other. The Ottoman Empire is still a thing. They're all going at it. America was largely like, we'll sell you weapons, but we don't want any part of this. Well, they joined the war eventually in 1917. Okay? So, 1917, America enters the war. It's been 3 years of just bloody conflict in the trenches. They've been losing thousands of lives to just gain a few feet of front, or losing a few thousand lives in a battle where they lose a few inches or a few feet of land because they're all fighting in these static trenches, right? Mm-hmm. America shows up and... we're like, okay, we got a bunch of fresh troops, and we've got a bunch of fresh perspective, and we're going to fight a much more mobile war against the Germans. So what do? They arm not all, sorry. There wasn't actually that many of them, but they get as many pump shotguns as they can from, I almost committed a heresy, Mr. John Moses Browning. This man makes a good old pump shotgun, right? So they buy a bunch of them, and they get as many of them as they can over to France. And so these Americans are hopping down in German trenches. Now, the Germans they've got machine guns, but these are big, heavy machine guns that are in fixed positions. They can't be easily moved. And so once you get past the machine guns, then you're dealing with a bunch of foot soldiers who are using single shot, bolt action rifles. So you drop in with a pump action shotgun, you can lay down with buckshot so much more hate than your counterparts.
Yeah.
So you have a bunch of these guys, and then also, by the way, these shotguns are also with a fixed bayonet that's about 18 inches long. So you can imagine these guys charging across the field with gas masks on, dropping down the trenches and just kaboom, 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 kaboom. And they called him a trench sweeper because it would just annihilate trenches. It was a very effective weapon. And so, in fact, get this. This is my fact. It was so effective that the Germans attempted to outlaw it and say that it was in war and say they weren't allowed to use it in accordance with the Geneva Convention. There's a line in there that says weapons shall not be implemented that create or cause undue harm and suffering. Which is, I get where they're going with it.
That goes along with like mustard gas and...
Okay. The Germans in 1914 and 15 introduced mustard gas.
This was after the pump action shotgun?
This is before. Before. And do you know what they also used? Flamethrowers.
Yeah, that's definitely way worse than a pump action shotgun. Tell me,
would you rather drown within your own lungs with the chemical reaction of mustard gas, get burned to death by a flamethrower, or die getting shot with buckshot? What's worse?
Flamethrower would be pretty cool.
No!
Dude, a ball of glory, man.
I have a great-grandfather who served in World War II in the Pacific. He was a flamethrower. I think he'd disagree with you. But anyway, so they tried to do that, and
definitely a pump action would be a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I would take that one. That's my point. Is that the Germans? It was whack. In fact, they went so far as to say that any American that was caught with a shotgun, with shotgun shells, with others who were carrying a shotgun, they were all going to be executed. And the man, the myth, the legend, General Pershing, who was in charge of the American Expeditionary Force, said, all right, well, we're going to execute any German that we find that has a flamethrower or uses chemical warfare. And so it was kind of like this political battle that happened over top of the action. And there's no documented cases, which is a little sketchy, because when you commit a war crime, you don't exactly document it unless you're the Nazis in World War II, because they documented everything. But in World War I, there's no documented cases of either Germans or American POWs being executed for carrying these weapons. But I think it's interesting to note that the pump-action shotgun drew so much hate from the opposition that they attempted to ban it in accordance with the Geneva Convention.
But it never got banned.
No, it never did. And we still use shotguns in combat today.
Yep.
So that's my fact. Donovan, today's a special episode.
I'm excited about this one. We have our first guest.
Yes, so let me introduce to you.
Wait, we got to hype him up.
I know, I'm about to.
Okay,
That's what I'm doing. I got this whole role. I asked him a bunch of questions earlier. This man graduated college with a bachelor's degree at the age of 19. He is Swiftwater Level 4 certified. He is a wilderness first responder that, unlike me, is still active. He is a dear friend of mine. He is the premier hype man at Snowbird, no matter what they say about some guy named Rouleau. And he was the part of the original fire team system at Snowbird Wilderness Outfitters. Ladies and gentlemen,
traveler.
He's also a world traveler.
Yeah,
absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, me and Donovan would like to introduce to you the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Cameron Schwarting!
Yeah. Boopity boop.
Hey!
What's up, guys?
Good to see you.
How's it going? Oh, man.
Thanks for coming on.
Let me just crack one open.
There we go.
Also,
Cheers.
I mean, I'm not trying to tell you guys how to do your show, but we're trying to monetize. We're trying to get that sponsorship, so labels out. Keep them that
sorry
way.
about that.
There you go.
Hey, check us out on the YouTube if you want to see it. Ale8, sponsor us. We love your soda.
Very good.
Hey,
Delish.
it is. See, do you have a fun fact for us?
I do. I do have a fun fact.
This
Yeah.
episode?
So I love learning about the history of spirits and liquors and different alcohol products.
When you said spirits, it's not like spirits. It's alcohol.
It's alcohol, but because for better or for worse, people get super super passionate about alcohol.
Right.
And inevitably, when there's human passion about something, there's gonna be a lot of really crazy stories that come out of it.
Sure.
And so, what a lot of people don't know about, though, is they don't know about the history of America's first spirit, America's first liquor.
Okay.
And so it was produced by this company called Laird's, and it was called Applejack. And so,
No way.
Yeah.
Like the
cereal?
Like the cereal. So kind of the history there is, the first, colonists are coming over from England, and they're used to having beer pretty regularly. They served it with meals a lot of times because, water was unsafe to drink, and it just tastes good.
Mm-hmm.
But you go over to America, and it's really difficult to produce beer at scale when you don't have the infrastructure for it. Also expensive to ship. And so for both of those things, just beer wasn't the answer for a lot of people. And so what became the drink of choice in colonial America was rum. And so that's getting shipped up from the Caribbean and all the slave plantations and things like that.
Okay.
But when the revolution breaks out, England is controlling all of that trade, so naturally the taxes get jacked way up. That's part of the reason why the Boston Tea Party happened. We talk about tea and we talk about sugar and stuff. A big part of it was also rum. That gets.
So to clarify, the reason rum became a big alcoholic beverage in the colonies was not because they were producing it, but because they would come from the Caribbean and stop over in the colonies.
Yeah, it was much cheaper to ship it because it was much closer to the production site.
Okay.
But yeah, so when you learn about the Boston Tea Party in 5th grade history or whatever, they don't tell you that. A lot of it was really just a bunch of people who wanted their booze.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so
I mean, if I have my choice between booze or tea,
Well,
I'm
I'm
don't
gonna
think I'll pick
I'm
tea.
gonna pour the tea into the harbor,
Absolutely.
but I think I might.
You're gonna steal the booze and
Yeah.
take that.
Yeah.
So we get to Applejack, and so
Okay.
apples, are native to the United States, they're native to North America, and you hear the story of Johnny Appleseed. He's out there, he's planting the trees, and that was all to produce this beverage. And so it's called Applejack because it came from New England, that same area that's rioting in the Revolution. Mm-hmm. And the way they would produce it is a process called jack distilling, where what you do is you take apple juice, concentrate it, and then you'd leave it outside in these barrels, in the cold New England winters, and the water would freeze before the alcohol. So when the water froze, they would just jack it off, take the water out, and then when it inevitably melted again, there would be less water left in this thing. And now there would be a higher concentration of alcohol.
Because alcohol doesn't freeze. They would
as quickly as water. Yeah.
To get the alcohol out, they would allow nature to do the process for them.
Yeah, so it was super, super simple. The only thing is also jack distilling is a really imprecise process. Mm-hmm. So you hear about
some of it will make you blind, and some of
it will make you blind, and some of it you'll be like, I'm just drinking, Mott's Tots.
Just apple juice.
Yeah. And so, it took over the United States by storm. So that's why apples, got their popularity in the States. Like, that's Johnny Appleseed. It was to make liquor.
Man, school told me that Johnny Appleseed loved apple pies. But here, I'm finding out that Johnny Appleseed was just a daggum, no good, low down booze peddler.
Yeah. And so to kind of bring it to what the one fact is, although there's a bunch of facts there.
There is a lot of facts.
So Applejack grows in popularity. It's the drink of choice in America throughout pretty much the entire 1800s. And then you get to Prohibition in the 1920s. And so obviously, that's going to shut down all of this Applejack production. And you have all of these apple farms that all of a sudden, like, the reason they exist has been outlawed. Like, they say, estimates, there's something like 80% of apple production in the United States was exclusively going towards producing liquor.
Oh, my gosh.
So you have 80% of an industry that's wiped out with a single act. So what they do is they get together one of the first genius marketing campaigns in American history. And they start, pushing apples as health food. And this is where the phrase "an apple a day
keeps the doctor away."
It was invented by apple farmers who were just trying to figure out what to do with all these dang apples because they couldn't get people drunk off of them anymore.
So they were like, "Eat them,
Yeah,
please buy
just
them,
eat
eat
'em."
them."
So yeah,
And then apple pie, like we like people say, "What's more American than apple pie?"
Yeah.
That's had to have come from that time frame as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And
that's pretty cool.
I have to agree with that. Like, apple pie is phenomenal. If you get the right apple, if you make a good apple pie, I don't think that there's other pies that really hold a candle to it. Now, if you get subpar apple pie, like, then it's like,
Yeah, like it can go bad.
it can be like just really basic. But
so Applejack,
sorry,
never.
I didn't know you're done.
No. It's just never recovered post Prohibition.
That's why we don't see it much now.
Yeah. So the only company that produces it to scale in the United States is Laird's. That first company that produced
They're still a thing?
They are still a thing, and they still are at their
Listeners.
original site from the 1790s.
Hey, listeners, if you're over the age of 21, we need to keep Laird's going. I need you to get online right now. We've actually got a link in the description below to take you to Laird's and buy some of their stuff.
Yeah.
We'll have a bottle of it next week.
Drink responsibly.
Only
Absolutely.
responsibly.
Yeah, so that's my
Camden,
fun fact.
I knew that having you on this podcast was going to be a treat. That was probably the best fact that we've introduced thus far.
I don't know. You figure out that history is wrong and everything's about getting drunk.
History has gotten so filtered, and I find myself wondering a lot of times, like, how different would culture be if we were just honest about where we came from?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And it's scary nowadays to think that, like, we're not talking about certain things that were talked about whenever we were in school. Mm-hmm. I wish I could think of an example right now if y'all can think of one. But I know a lot of things are being taken out of school or just not being taught. Like, I think Abraham Lincoln, certain things about him are being taught less or...
Yep. And here's an example. I mean, I was taught I read a book when I was in middle school or maybe younger about George Washington cutting down an apple tree. Mm-hmm. All comes back to apples. Yeah. Anyway, but like, and when he was asked about it, he fessed up, and it's just this story of honesty. But it wasn't. It never happened. Like, it was literally like American propaganda to. But I mean, everyone loved him. He was a great war leader. Like they had a lot of respect for him. But it's like, to your point, Donnie, I wish that history would be not so much about trying to make these men bigger than they were, but just allow their legacy to be cemented on what they actually accomplished. This actually is a beautiful segue into our topic tonight.
Well, real quick, I do want to add, not only their legacy being based off of like their accomplishments, but also us being able to look back and learn from the mistakes of people from history. We can't just blot out bad, offensive things that have happened.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just going to repeat these bad, offensive things. I say offensive with quotations just because people will agree or disagree on certain things.
What is offensive these days?
What is offensive? It's different for everybody.
Right.
But we do need to know people are real and people are going to make mistakes. And we can either take advantage of other people making mistakes for us and learning from it so that we don't have to, or we can forget about it and just learn on our own the hard way.
Yeah.
Which will happen.
Which will happen.
It's harder every time.
Yep.
Also, I think that is, that's something that makes me so thankful for the Bible and the way that it portrays its characters, so to speak. You know,
Absolutely.
like there are no, supermen in the Bible. We don't have these larger than life figures. Like you brought up Abe Lincoln. I think he's a great example in American history where he is just essentially preached in such a way that he is just this
Do no wrong.
Yeah, can do no wrong. Is
Honest
perfectly
Abe.
good and upright figure. And he did a lot of good in his life, but he still was a flawed dude that had things going on. But you see in the Bible that we have these characters who were deeply flawed, but God still used them, and they just have these complex lives. Like there's a complexity to life that doesn't get taught a lot, but is just real, and we can learn from it.
The example that always pops to my head is David. We're told in Sunday school, we read it in the Bible, he's a man after God's own heart. He also commits what, to me personally, is one of the worst atrocities in the Bible, where he sleeps with one of his most loyal men's wives while his soldier is on campaign.
Yeah.
And then, to cover it up, has that soldier murdered. And then takes his wife to be his own. The story of David and Bathsheba. And so it's like, man, how can you take a man that God literally describes as being after his own heart, in love and in valor and in responsibility, and then will stoop to such a low to be like, he's already got a wife, but not only is he not fighting with his troops, but he's sleeping with their wives, and then murdering them to cover it up. So it's like, and David is awesome. He's got so much. David and Goliath. He reunites the kingdom, but then.
I'm sorry, I just thought of something really inappropriate. You can just
Of course
continue.
you did. Oh, man. The highs and lows of Camden Schwarting. Bring in the Bible and then also bring it down. Anyway, so...
Yeah, and the cultural context is so important, too, where I think we look back in history and, like, even going back to the Abe Lincoln thing where, like, slavery is very common. Like, obviously he did a lot to, abolish slavery, but he did so while also having slaves, which is a very common thing.
Abe Lincoln owned
not to say
slaves?
because...
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And not say that just because it was common, that means that it was right, but looking at like the cultural context, that's something nowadays is extremely frowned upon. Whereas it was way more normal back then, and so you can't blot it out just because it doesn't align with today's context.
Yeah. We
Today's
can't say...
agenda.
Or today's agenda,
Yeah, we can't say he never did it, but we also can't just say he was a terrible person because he did. It's like right, because it's like David. Was he a man after God's own heart, or was he an adulterous murderer? Yes,
Both, yeah.
and I think. Okay, so and now we can start progressing. Though I think a lot of us, which we would all classify ourselves as more conservative than liberal politically. I mean, you might be.
I'll have you take that back. No.
You might be libertarian for sure.
Absolutely. Libertarian.
But
anarchic? No.
but we're not going to be part of the far left.
Yeah.
But the far left's agenda, by and large, is not just erase history, but hate it. It's a product of propaganda to uphold the wealthy, oppress the poor, oppress the minority. That's the perspective they're pushing, and so we've seen that for the past 2 decades, coming up. And so I'm not going to dwell too much on that, because now it's interesting. Camden, you and I were talking about this the other night. We've seen such a push to move American and Western culture as a whole away from traditional values, away from a monogamous marriage of a man and a wife, away from being centered on a community, away from being centered on the roles of a husband and a wife and their children. It's now we're moving more towards you define your own truth. You define your own gender. You define everything.
We had to create a documentary called "What Is a Woman?" because there was genuine confusion apparently. Right.
So all that's happening, and so what Camden and I was talking about the other night was how interesting it is now to see kind of a rebound against that, not necessarily coming from solely Christian circles. Right, we see a bunch of young, particularly I think young men. At least that's what I'm aware of, because I'm one of them. And pushing back against this idea of man needs to be subdued and not aggressive, not take charge, not. Everything that man is, and I think a lot of men now who have been raised in that system, who are now coming into age of adulthood, have felt that pressure of that system. That's like, now they're like, no, I want to go to the gym and lift weights. I want to go out and push my body. I want to be successful. I want to actually get good grades in school. Back in the day, if you wanted to be rebellious, you failed your classes. Now to be rebellious, you take the time to be a good student, because that's outside the norm, right? And
I mean, even politically, they've done studies to show that as Gen Zers are getting to where more and more of them are becoming a voting population, they skew far more conservative than the millennials before them,
right?
And I would still classify it as a subculture, what you're talking about, but it's growing.
It exists, and
something that didn't happen
vocal
before.
And so what I want to talk to you guys about is the big vocal proponents that's driving this culture, this counterculture move back towards the right and back towards the middle, away from the left. And people like this who are really prominent on YouTube and on different social media apps, and men who are driving the philosophical, kind of spear point that a lot of these young men are getting their ideas from are men like Jordan Peterson,
conservative men.
Well, I'm just saying men who are trying to get the men who are sick of being told that they need to not be.
To be more sensitive and subdued.
Which and again, we talked about this on our first podcast. There's nothing wrong with a sensitive man, right?
Yeah.
But a man who is still capable of violence.
Right. Yeah.
Right. A man who is also capable of
ready for action,
disciplining himself. A man who's going to go out and try and conquer in a good way. Conquer the business world. Conquer. Just go out and achieve things. Young men. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm hitting the table. I do apologize to the listener. So a lot of young men are wanting this, right? And so Jordan Peterson, he's a clinical psychologist, and he's a if you dear listener doesn't know who Jordan Peterson is, you should look his stuff up. It's awesome.
Have you heard the recent drama that he's going through?
He's going through drama?
Yeah,
man, everybody in the conservative circle is going through drama.
Well,
is it about his license being?
It's about his license potentially getting pulled.
Okay, but let's get into that in a second. I want to introduce this and then let you guys talk, because I've been doing a lot of talking. But is that? So Jordan Peterson, he's the clinical psychologist. He's also a philosopher. He teaches philosophy at Toronto. I don't know if he still does, but I know that's what he was doing a lot of. And he makes a lot of videos. He makes a lot of public talks. Basically, he encourages young men to do stuff like make their bed, and go out and make them something of themselves, because they are responsible for me. It's really awesome. I enjoy a lot of his stuff. Jocko Willink. We've referenced him a lot on the podcast.
Yeah, cool.
He is awesome. He's a former Navy SEAL. Now he goes around the country and he does seminars teaching particularly business owners how to run a more efficient business, how to be good leaders. He also pushes a big doctrine of being disciplined. There's
Extreme ownership is one of his biggest topics.
Yeah, he has, in fact, a book titled Extreme Ownership.
Yeah,
I love,
he does a TED Talk as well that's really good, so it's kind of...
There's a link in the description as well if you want to buy Extreme Ownership, so check it out.
I recommend reading the book, but also he has like a 10-minute TED Talk. We can put that link in the description as well. It's on YouTube, where it's just a condensed version of what he talks about in the book. It's really good. This past summer, I was a part of something called the Servant Team program at Snowbird, where basically I got to like oversee and disciple 10 high school age students for 12 weeks.
Who would
10,
give you
10
that
weeks?
kind of responsibility?
I know, for real. But that was the first thing that I did with them is watch that video and be like, this is the standard, like what we expect of you during the summer.
Dude, that's an awesome way to set the standard.
Yeah, and go watch it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore just because I think the listeners should go watch it.
Yeah.
Obviously, after you either watch or listen to this podcast.
Yeah, finish this first.
Yeah, finish this first, and then go watch that or listen to it, and you'll understand. Like, it's so good.
So, other big proponents of it, I want to introduce two more characters, and then I want to get into this conversation. Is one of them's Joe Rogan. He's definitely more, libertarian, liberal leaning politically. Like, he's going to vote much more left leaning than I am. But he also is really, if you listen to any of his podcasts, he's really fed up with the nonsensical left movements of like transgender and compelled speech and the COVID outbreak. He's a really loud voice against mandates, and so a lot of the left will puts him in the box of conservatism, even though he's not there. But he also is a guy who's like, man, be responsible, be hardworking, take care of your body, all this kind of stuff. And then the last person I want to introduce is somebody that I do not look up to at all, but he is the champion of middle schoolers everywhere, and his name is Andrew Tate.
Oh,
I thought you were going to say Mr. Beast.
Oh, frick. And we're not even going to get into Mr. Beast. But Andrew Tate definitely also would lean, probably, if you were to look at him politically, is maybe he's a bit apolitical, but like the things he promotes.
yeah. I mean, he's not in America.
No.
Yeah.
He's in a Romanian prison.
Yeah.
Interesting. We'll get into that. But he, nonetheless, he is a big influence because I think the reason he's a big influence, and this is my last introduction, is that I had a conversation with a bunch of middle schoolers on this topic. I was asking them, I said, who do you guys like to watch that, talks about culture? And they're like, oh man, Andrew Tate. And I'm like, what do you like about Andrew Tate? He's like, he gets it. He gets it what it is to be a man. And I'm like, really? Interesting. Why do you say that? And so I just kept talking to them about him and what their thoughts on it. I think the draw that Andrew Tate has is, one, he's bombastic, and middle schoolers love bombastic. Over the top. They say edgy things.
Yeah,
whatever.
he's like a Gary V, but more approachable and like for like younger audience.
Yeah, and he also talks about cars, and he talks about guns, and he talks about sex. So, like, kids love him. Older kids, they do. They do. This is also why my kids aren't going to have the internet for a long time growing up. It's just I'm scared of what they're going to be exposed to. But
you don't think the stock market's going to collapse and we're going to just devolve into this feudal system? Like, you think?
I pray for that.
There's still going to be an internet when you have kids?
The only thing that I'll be disappointed in that is they won't be able to watch reruns of the Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up podcast.
Oh, amen.
I mean, the direction the metaverse is heading in, we will be the internet.
That's true.
Whoa.
Hey,
Anyway, hold on.
Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up coming to you in 4D
Put on them
real soon.
Put on them VR goggles. So you can hang
can
out
sit
around the
You
table.
can sit at this table with us in the metaverse.
Yeah,
It'll be awesome.
it's gonna be great. You, me, and Zuck. It's gonna be awesome.
Anyway, I think to cut this short, I think that what Andrew Tate offers is a correct analysis of culture and the problems therein. He diagnoses it accurately. The problem is his solutions are not only, I believe, harmful, but they're also, from our perspective, inherently non-Christian. And that then bleeds into the rest of these guys. Every single person that I referenced, even Jordan Peterson, even though it's kind of hard to tell sometimes, are not professing believers. And so what I want to hear from you guys, because Camden, you've expressed interesting things, and Donovan, I know you got good thoughts, is like, okay, what's the benefit from guys like this who are like, they agree with us, but they're not Christians? But then what's the danger in listening to guys who are going to be promoting an idea that we on the face value would agree with, but then at the heart doesn't have Christ?
Yeah, I think you gotta ask. It was the question that I would be asking if I wasn't a believer and I was being told to do these things is, what's the point? I guess maybe it could, benefit society or even the economy of just being a hardworking man, because it does.
Or even benefit you individually.
Right, yeah. But
financially, or whatever.
My driving role in, just working and exercising and, taking care of myself, being a good leader, is primarily because that is what I think as a man we were created for. We were created, talk about in Genesis, we were created to work and to serve and to lead. And so for someone who does not have, Jesus at the center of their life, who is saying you need to do these things, they firmly believe that's what men are designed to do. But what's telling them that? And so I think that
where's the standard?
Where's the standard? And so I think my hope is that as these men are telling young men or even older men that, like, hey, like, this is important that you do these things, I hope that we would ask the question, like, why? And I hope that we would genuinely seek an answer.
Yeah, and if it's truly good, if it's morally superior, why? Like, why is that morally? If there's a moral code out there, where does that moral code come from? I think that's really good.
Yeah, I think asking that question of why is kind of hitting it on the head, because, we've been using the term, like, left or liberalism is kind of like a catch-all, but I think specifically what a lot of these guys are going against is the elements of, we would call, like, woke culture or cancel culture, and like those, because so Joe Rogan's a great example of, like, a guy who politically could kind of be all over the place, but he's definitely against, like, wokeness and cancel culture and stuff like that. But I don't know, I read a really fascinating book over this past summer. It's by Carl Trueman. It's called The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. And what it's about is, so he's this philosopher, and he's alive, and he's talking about this idea.
There's a link in the description.
Oh, there's a link for, apparently.
There will be.
Braden generated it.
Braden is so good, man.
It's incredible. He drinks protein shakes, and the links just come right out.
Man, Braden, known as the odd nun, coming through clutch.
Yep. But no. So he talks about this concept
Hold on, one more time. What's the book called?
The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self.
Link in the description below.
Yeah, and he's also got an abridged version that's Rise and Triumph, big book. Okay. But the abridged version's got all the good stuff. I can't think of the name right now, but we'll get it down there.
Sweet.
But so yeah, it's about this concept of expressive individualism. Is this thing that he says has, like, taken over the culture. And expressive individualism, in the way that he describes it, is basically this idea that you are wholly defined in the way that you choose to be. Like, you get to be the complete source of who you are as an individual.
Which is what we're all told as kids, man. You grow up and what do you want to be when you grow up?
Exactly. You get to define yourself, and then what it shifts the morality to is it says, man, your now moral obligation is to live as true to what yourself is as possible. And you get to define what that is whenever you want to. You can change your mind, you can do whatever, but you just always need to be living true to yourself. It's, in the modern culture, it's sin to not be true to yourself. And so, we see that the big thing that we've been frustrated with as Christians watching this culture, we talk about the rise of different aberrant sexual philosophies and stuff, and
freaking love you, Camden.
Yeah, just all
abhorrent sexual philosophies.
Yeah, and
we worded that as abhor, by the way, which is to hate.
It's bad, but bad stuff.
Abhorrent.
and just different political ideologies and all of these things that we've seen come up, is at this root of, well, I just need to find out what myself is and then do whatever it takes to be myself. And so what worries
because
me...
I am morally obligated to it, because I'll be cheating myself of my fulfilling my true happiness if I don't allow my true self to be expressed.
Yeah, and how dare you not let me do that?
Yeah.
And so to Donnie's point about asking the why and the morality behind it, is what worries me is we see guys who are just shifting that needle in a different direction. We're saying it's still all about me just doing what makes me feel good and fulfilling myself. Yeah. It's just these happen to be things that on the surface are more palatable to us.
Right.
We talk about, pursuing strength, pursuing, industriousness, pursuing, being a good husband. Because all of those things, those are commanded to us in the scripture, but part of the reason God commands them to do it to us is because that's how we're built to enjoy those things and to love those things. And so even if you're just doing it, you're going to get some measure of satisfaction out of it. Like there's this strength coach, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he has this quote that I always love where he says, "There is no situation in which strength would not make you happier." It says, a weak man can be happy in any situation, but in every situation, that weak man would be happier if he were a strong man.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's true, and so people are pursuing that and they're finding fulfillment in that, and that's great to a point. And I think that's where we have to keep our guard up as Christians.
Oh, yeah. So what you're saying is like what these guys are offering. Jocko offers discipline. Jordan Peterson offers just general betterment of self, be it discipline, be it intellectual, be it cleanliness. Yeah. And then like David Goggins, he would say like run, just go, be hard, and so like, but in Andrew Tate, he says make money, drive big fast cars, be strong, and then anybody who disagrees with you, destroy them. Yeah. I think that's awesome what you were saying about the being yourself, the modern self, radical individualism, where it's like that is the exact same thing. Andrew Tate saying, "I'm going to be myself because it makes me happy," is the exact same philosophy that the person says, you need to call me as a biological man, a woman.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing as the kid who insists that he gets to drink from a dog bowl because he's a dog now.
Yeah.
Kids are pooping in litter boxes nowadays.
Yeah. It looks better to be Andrew Tate for a while, not in Romanian prison. No. But it's still...
Because it's a little bit closer. Yeah, it's a little closer to the biblical order, maybe, because he's identifying as a man. Props to him. Yeah. He is trying, he's making the most of his resources. He's giving jobs to other people. Those are all good things. But then also he's accused of human trafficking, which is abhorrent. Yeah. He also I wish Braden, if you can, in post-production, put in a clip of Andrew Tate saying that women are not as cool as men, or they're worse than men. Like I
didn't know he said that.
It's a blatant sexist statement. Most people will say, most people in this realm will say that men and women are different, which I will agree with. I think that what men and women are good at can have some overlap, but they're generally separate.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean we're equal, because we're not. But it also doesn't mean that one's then better. It's just different, right? Andrew Tate straight up says men are better. Yeah. And so, if you can find a clip like that to link to give in a description. So, things like that, I'm like, no. And so that's where, as somebody who sees him growing in popularity, especially among young men who want to make their lives better and want to push back against progressivism, I'm like, this is not your answer. This is the antithesis of your answer, is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah. Abhor Andrew Tate. I like the other guys a little more, even though they're not believers. Oh, Ben Shapiro was the other guy I want to talk about, but he's all right. Where it's like, if you're listening to this and you really like, you really enjoy those Andrew Tate shorts on YouTube and Instagram, stop. Click those three little dots and say, do not recommend, and don't follow him. Don't give him your support, because he claims to support the things that are good, but the way he goes about it is completely non-Christian. And
I think it just it's like anything. It calls for clear-headedness. You know, like just whenever we're engaging with any material, even if it claims to be Christian, you know, it's just being aware of what you're listening to, having your filters on, like, and we can listen to these guys. You know, we can listen to non-Christian guys, and we can get value from it, and we can get, you know, you're not going to be wrong for getting a marathon training plan from David Goggins, you know, but just know what you're doing. You know that you're handling.
Go into it wide eyes open.
Yeah, don't. Basically, I think the principle is, unless it is Christ, don't full-heartedly throw yourself behind anything.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and just think about, like, you know, Joe Rogan is super big into, like, health and you know, like being physically healthy, mentally healthy, and, you know, you were talking about like Andrew Tate big into money and success and everything, and it's like, but ultimately you're going to get to the end of your life. Your health is going to fail. Your brain is going to fail.
Your kids spend all your money.
Your kids spend all your money.
You're
like you don't get to take your money with you when you die.
Yeah.
The one thing that will not fail and that will remain constant for literally all of eternity and not change, not fluctuate one bit is Christ. And so, not to say any of these other things are bad, they're just not going to last.
Yeah.
Christ will last. So if that isn't like your drive and your purpose for everything, if you do not have the one goal, which is to like glorify and honor like Christ, then it's all just empty wealth, empty fame.
It's an idol.
It's an idol. Yeah.
Gospel treason, baby.
Yeah.
Gospel treason.
Still not so.
Idolatry is rooted in the heart.
The heart of man produces evil continually, is what I heard.
Did you perhaps hear that from John Calvin?
From the Bible, actually, that one.
Oh, that's right. John Calvin said the heart is a factory of idols.
Yeah.
Where did John Calvin hear it from?
Well, he quoted that. That's his quote, but he got the quote from the Bible.
Come on.
So you know that all three of us at this table are in the faith lineage of John Calvin directly.
Yeah.
So let me explain that. So I have a chart.
Okay.
I have a chart that was put together by Princeton, and
Did this chart did Princeton put this chart together for you?
no,
Okay.
they did not put it together for me specifically.
Okay.
A friend of mine put it together for me specifically from Princeton.
Oh, that's so sweet. So technically, Princeton put it together specifically for you.
That's true. That's true. But so Princeton, you know, was founded as a seminary by Jonathan Edwards. And
Oh, okay.
yeah,
That was a big sigh.
that was. You all right? You doing okay there?
I just feel really good now.
But yeah, so Princeton was founded by Jonathan Edwards, and Jonathan Edwards at the time was able to trace his lineage of faith back to John Calvin by saying, hey, this is the guy who taught me Christianity, and this is the guy who taught that guy Christianity, this is the guy who taught that guy Christianity, going back to Calvin. And so Jonathan Edwards got to him,
Yeah.
and then ever since then, Princeton's been tracing it down, and that goes all the way down to a guy named, what's
Brody
his name?
Holloway.
No, but it goes all the way down ultimately to a person who has taught all of us the Bible and Christianity, Zechariah Mabry.
Oh!
Yeah.
Of course.
And so through Zechariah Mabry, all of us are ultimately in the lineage of Calvin.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
What if we get Zach on the podcast?
I think we could.
I think he'd have a blast.
He would. I think we could come up with some good questions to ask him.
He's from Louisville. He'll definitely drink L8.
Oh, yeah. Just make sure not to give him this one.
He'll pop a late one.
L8 one. Did you urinate in there?
I did.
While we were recording?
Bro, we made eye contact.
Are you kidding me?
You didn't hear the zipper?
No, I missed that whole thing. Because I saw you finish it off.
Yeah.
And then I looked, and I saw there was liquid in there again. And I was like, huh.
Blew his mind.
You just blew my mind.
Not many people can say they peed on camera. And
This is probably a podcast first anywhere.
you go watch YouTube and see if you can catch me doing it.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. Maybe.
How did I miss that?
I freaking love this thing.
Got to be some guy with a catheter, right? You know, he's a trickle this whole time.
I promise that no catheter is used in the production of this video.
Drink to that.
You gonna drink to that?
No, I am not.
I'm not touching my bottle to your bottle.
I have done that once by accident. I'll never do it again.
It's disgusting.
Drank your own pee?
Yeah. Have you ever drank your own pee?
No.
Have you not accidentally?
No.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're in a survival situation and you drink your own pee, it'll dehydrate you more.
All I know is I've heard repetitively that it just is not necessarily. It doesn't. People say it's good to get it through your system another time, and that right there is not true. Whether or not it actually dehydrates you more, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
Because I think your body is, by urinating, you're also expelling salt.
Right, you're getting rid of all the things your body doesn't want.
All that salt, which dehydrates you, back into your body.
I would imagine it's not good. Don't drink your urine in a survival situation.
Yeah.
I mean...
Or just ever.
In any situation.
Yeah.
Well, unless it's an accident.
So how do you guys wrap this up?
Yeah.
How 50 minutes in? We got 10 more minutes to talk.
Well, we have to cut out that whole last 3 minutes.
No,
there.
we don't. It is staying.
That just derailed the entire conversation.
Well, I felt like it was nearing the end of the point anyway.
Okay.
Like you guys said.
Well, in this last 10 minutes, I do want to talk about a good biblical influence for, I think, masculinity.
Instead of, because we got all these masculine influences.
Yeah,
that are not,
I mean,
okay,
obviously Jesus.
Yeah.
Or before I get into that, I do want to say I think toxic masculinity is a big, I guess, theme or something that people, especially on the left, will talk about a lot today, and I do agree that it is a thing.
Yeah, it's called Andrew Tate.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, dude, the guy goes to prison for sex trafficking, and you just dog on him. Like, come on.
Yeah,
I dogged on him before he went to prison. All right,
but I think a good biblical example is David.
Yeah,
Thompson.
Well,
David Thompson, who should also
friend of ours.
He needs to listen. He told me he was going to listen to this podcast, so we know what we're going to do.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
David from the Bible that we've been referencing this episode. Yeah, so I'll talk about that a little bit. He's imperfect. He did a lot of good and a lot of bad, and there's a lot you can learn from. But I think one of the things that I think is really cool about learning from David is in the world of toxic masculinity, it's almost like creativity is shunned. Mm-hmm. I mean, like he was a songwriter.
Darn right.
Wrote poems, played the lyre. How do you pronounce it?
Lyre. I mean, it's like a mini harp, I think.
Yeah,
ran around in robes.
Yeah, and then but he did those things to the best of his ability to glorify the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so I think the root of masculinity is glorifying the Lord in whatever you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to hear y'all's thoughts on that.
Well, I would say I think that is such a real trap. When you start to say, "Hey, I want to take, my masculinity seriously" or whatever, is that you can get into this mindset where you're like, okay, so now I just need to go out and grab all of these things that appear masculine and just make them who I am.
Right.
Put on my cool pants.
I want to dress like Grand Thumb, and then my personality's complete.
Yeah,
You get the reference, you get the reference.
But it's just not necessary. Right. You can absolutely, be a glory to the Lord while being a guy who's like naturally really skinny and cuffs his pants. And I know, even though OT.
I'm raised in that old school, man. If you cuff your pants, you're going to hell.
What if I told you my pants are cuffed right now?
Right, as we speak.
See, I've been trying to work on that, all right? I don't actually believe it. I try and have diverse friends that teach me new things about the beauty of humanity.
I cuff my pants to the glory of the Lord, man.
But, I've had friends like this in college especially who were just super different from me, on super different wavelengths as far as, hobbies and interests and things like that. But I loved going through that process of learning that, okay, even though this guy feels off to me and my natural self, we're not into the same things.
Right.
I can still respect the fact that this guy is pursuing the Lord and what he's doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to... one of my favorite examples is a friend of mine who quit his job to pursue playing video games full-time professionally.
Fascinating. You don't usually, conflate masculinity and success and being a godly man
And video games.
and video games. Those usually like divergent.
Yeah, but so he's a competitive video game player, and he uses that as a ministry to reach out to all these people at these tournaments.
Wow.
Who you're talking about, like the sweaty neckbeard type, everything you can think of. I went with him one time to one of these tournaments, and there was literally a guy there dressed up in like a maid outfit, like the anime type of deal, the whole
Like the
thing.
black dress, the white bibs,
and
the
it was
little
a guy, yeah. And so he goes and he puts himself in these situations, in these environments, and he's a witness for the gospel. And
That's
very, very strong, very confident evangelist. And then he's good at what he does, and he gets to be invited to go to those tournaments and be a part of those things.
And I think to take this all the way back, got almost full circle to your point of the book you referenced, which was
Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self.
link in the description below.
You feel smart every time you say it.
I mean, you sounded incredibly intelligent talking about it throughout. So I think you did some good old like sponge brain of just soaking it all in.
Oh, yeah.
So, but it's talking about how modern America says, "Be the best you can be, and then you'll be happy."
Yeah.
And I think that resonates with us to such a level because that is what God has commanded us to do. Mm-hmm. But it's with a slight twist. Now you define what you are.
Yeah.
What we have to do is look and see what God defines us as.
Yeah.
And then live our best to that. Because in that, then we're going to be satisfied because who are we to try and define ourselves? Everyone who knows anything, who's experienced any amount of life, knows that life is complicated.
Yeah.
Like, we might know ourselves the best because we live with ourselves, but we still, I confuse myself on the daily.
Yeah.
And so I need to look to God to give me definition, to give me meaning. And so once I find his meaning, then I can pursue that. And that often looks like taking care of your body, being a good husband, making an awesome podcast that points people to the Lord and says, "Screw you, Andrew Tate." So anyway, man, this has been awesome, guys.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said there, but I don't want to make it sound easier than it is. Like, obviously, follow the Lord, let him define who you are. But, I still, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but that's not what that looks like. It's like I can be just feel like I'm lost in my path, but know like, okay, I'm going to trust the Lord with this and, let him guide me. Just be prayerful through certain situations and just lead however I feel like he's following me, just through prayer, through like daily reading of his word. I think it's so easy to just make excuses of like, God isn't answering my prayers or anything, but it's like, really, if you're not starting with prayer and with the daily reading of Scripture, then you're already on the wrong track.
You're already on the deficit.
Yes.
You're already in the hole. Brody said to me one time, and those of you who don't know who Brody is, he's my pastor, all of our pastor, and he's been really influential in my life. And I was talking to him about that very thing, where I was like, man, I feel like I don't have any direction. I feel like, God's not speaking to me like in really a really specific calling. Some people say, man, ever since I was 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be on the mission field or, fill in the blank. Yeah. And they're doing that now. And I'm like, man, why don't I feel that? I've got this vague sense of I want to be this cool guy that people like and that does cool things. But one, how do you make money doing that? And two, what does that actually look like? But what he told me is he said, Orrin, you need to quit waiting for God to open a door for you. You've got a bunch of doors in front of you. And what you need to do is pick a door and try and open it. And if it doesn't open it, you need to look and see if there's a lock that you can pick. And if you can't pick a lock, you need to run full force and hit the door. And if the door doesn't budge, that means God doesn't want you to go through that door.
Amen.
And so you find another one. You either look and see if one starts opening, and you just keep trying new doors. And it's all under the umbrella of understanding what God has for my life. And so for those of you listening to this podcast, I just want to encourage you, if you're feeling directionless and you're a Christian, understand that God has given us a lot of flexibility. He says, honor me. Whatever your hand finds to do it unto the Lord. Whether you eat or you sleep or whatever you do it to the glory of the Lord, right? And so that's a lot of freedom. If it's pursuing a college degree, go and do that degree to the best of your ability. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to get all A's to glory of the Lord. It means you have to give your 100%. And if that's, a B or a C, it's like that. That's not the big deal. The big deal is, did you work your hardest to produce an excellent product? If you're making a podcast, we're trying to, make a content that's useful for other people, enjoyable for us, and honoring to the Lord. Whatever it is. Right now I'm working in sales. Did I see myself working in sales? Do I see myself continuing to work in sales? Not necessarily, but while I'm there, I'm going to try and do it to the excellence of the Lord. And in that, you're going to find meaning. And eventually, if you're submitting to the Lord and saying, God, my life is yours, and I'm going to live every day like it is, He's going to start developing that. And that's given me a lot of hope in my insecurity of my future direction.
Yeah. As believers, we can take confidence in the fact that we serve an all-knowing God who knows our path, and I find a lot of comfort in the fact that I'm not the one who, I don't have to worry about it. Obviously, I'm going to work hard and follow that path to the best of my ability for where I feel like He's leading me, but I know that's in His hands, and He sees time laid out before Him because He laid it out, and it'll be okay.
That's right. Well, Camden, you got anything else? Got any dad advice for the listeners?
Any dad advice?
Yeah, just good life advice. Healthy living.
Living the good life.
And growing the brain.
Yeah.
Being good to people.
I'll say one of the things that I've tried to live by, and I think this is something that is sorely lacking in the world around me, just in the world at large. But people are always like, man, I want to be interesting. I want to be well liked. I want to be funny. You have all these personality traits that you want to add to yourself, but it's just kind of ethereal. How do you become cooler? And
I wish I knew.
Yeah, but what I would tell all of those people is, I was like, man, the way to start all of that process is to just start caring more. I think there's such a lack of care in the world around us. We live these lackadaisical lives, just consuming whatever TikTok spoon feeds us next. But no, be curious about the world around you. Be interested in what's happening, and when you have a question that pops into your mind, don't just dismiss it, but chase it down and find the answer.
Be passionate.
Yeah, be a passionate person. I think that solves a lot of those weird interpersonal things that I think you really deal with in your late teens and 20s.
Man, I tell you what, having this podcast to be passionate about each week, to get in and record and try to do something with excellence, as small as that is, has been something that's just given me motivation, has improved my mood, has improved my desire to go out and do other things that are harder for me to get into. When I'm not passionate about my work, but I'm passionate about doing something that matters. And this podcast is mostly a hobby, but I think it matters on a small scale. Yeah. And so, just having something to be passionate about, like you were saying, that's what the society needs. It needs people who care about the world around them, cares about something that they're going after. Be it your work. If you can find it in your work, that's awesome. Yeah. And I'm still looking for that, and I think we all are, to an extent. But, right now, my desire is to, start a family, find a woman that would be my wife, and
desires for a woman.
I know, and raise a family that loves the Lord. Yeah. That's my goal right now, that I feel like I can really pour that into, and be passionate about, and so for those of you listening, if you want something to, if you want your life to get better, and to have more meaning, some of that in subjection to the Lord is up to you. Give your life meaning by finding something you're passionate about and going after it, because there's a good chance God made you to do it. And so, yeah, cool. That's some good dad advice, Camden.
Thanks. Is this the section now where we nominate somebody?
Yes, it is.
Sweet.
So, Donovan,
you go out.
Okay. So for our invitation this week, we would like to invite David Thompson to be on the podcast. So David, We would love it if you would join us.
Freaking listen to an episode. You
Yeah,
tell me all the
yeah.
time you're just never going to listen, and that's not what a good friend does. So if not for me, if not for Donovan, for Cam Dog, Cameron Schwarting.
And for Braden.
It's not Cameron, it's Camden. But, and for Braden, who puts in all the hard work. So come on this podcast. We'll talk about some fun things. We love you, buddy.